The movie Clerks released on October 19th, 1994. With it came the debut of writer and director Kevin Smith, a name that may mean a lot to you if you're a male nerd of a certain age. The flick follows Dante, a long-suffering convenience store clerk, going into work on a day that he's not supposed to be there. We also meet a colorful cast of characters, including his friend and video store clerk, Randall, and the local drug dealers and loiterers, Jay and Silent Bob. Clerks managed to capture the minds of just about every self-identified nerd, slacker, and pop culture-obsessed dork of the era, with its snappy dialogue filled to the brim with pop culture references and conversations that felt pretty real. On a budget of about $27,000, Clerks was the little film that could. And it would go on to spawn an entire universe of movies. And this included 2 direct sequels with Clerks 2 and Clerks 3, and one 6-episode TV show, the eponymous Clerks, which was later amended to Clerks the Animated Series. In the second context-giving intro, the year was 2000. It was the summer of the PlayStation 2. I personally was not old enough to speak yet, and Clerks the Animated Series was about to hit the airwaves. Created by Kevin Smith and developed by his frequent producer Scott Mosier and Seinfeld writer/producer David Mandel, Clerks followed the characters of the movie in animated adventures. The series would air 2 episodes of its 6-episode run on ABC, out of order, before being cancelled and later sent to Comedy Central to die, and then be reborn again when nerds on the internet started reviewing it. Genuinely, I feel like this is one of the most beloved short-lived shows in cartoon reviewing spheres. Even when I was just a viewer of these reviews, I can't remember seeing someone have a negative opinion of it. It's kind of the gold standard of canceled too soon 2000s adult animation. This show has become sort of a cult classic in retrospect. It got an uncensored DVD release in 2001, which was pretty successful, and it prompted a full release of the series on Comedy Central after that. And Kevin Smith has spent years talking about how he'd like to bring it back, but the long and short of Clerks the Animated Series' short run seems to have come down to a network that didn't understand the project that they had picked up. In the DVD commentary for the cartoon, the series creators mentioned that they had pitched the show just about everywhere, before nearly ending up on UPN, who initially offered them a guaranteed 13-episode run. Using this offer, they went back to ABC, who had initially turned them down, and pitched it again. Although ABC would offer them a measly 6 episodes, an executive there ensured them that UPN would be off the air within a year. Well, not quite. Many better YouTubers than me have taken a look at this show and probably explain the history better. But if you know me, you know that I love the movie Clerks. I spent 4 years of film school and pretty much every year since accidentally making Clerks again and again and again in my personal projects. Is it a perfect movie? No. Is it vaguely offensive and a product of its time? Yeah, let's just say it's a problematic fave. And that's why I wanted to take a look at Clerks the Animated Series. I personally hadn't watched it before deciding to take on this review, and I'm hoping I might have an interesting take or whatever. P.S. I'm going to be recapping episodes, so if this is a show you've been waiting to watch for some reason, probably go do that first. It's only 6 episodes.
You know, I always said this job would be great if it weren't for the customers.
Episode 1. Leonardo returns, and Dante has an important decision to make. The first episode starts off much the same as its film predecessor, with Dante being called into work on his day off. This is kinda where the similarities end. While Clerks the movie is held to the constraints of being live action and on a very tight budget, Clerks the Animated Series is able to push the types of stories being told, and they don't skimp going in. Episode 1 introduces recurring villain Leonardo, billionaire and great-great-grandson of the founder of Leonardo, New Jersey, where this show takes place. He has a personal vendetta against the Clerks and uses his money to erect a bigger, better, quicker stop across the street. When this puts the quick stop at risk of closing, Dante and Randall decide to break into Leonardo's office and end up uncovering that he plans to enslave the world. They rush this news to the town hall, and when they present it, no one cares. Well, except the one guy from out of town.
Do you live in Leonardo?
No, New York City! I'm on my way to the beach and I stopped to use the bathroom!
They turn to TV to come up with a new plan to foil Leonardo's plans, and go through with it. Not that any of this matters, because Jay and Silent Bob accidentally blow up the Quicker Stop with fireworks, which is fun cartoon nonsense, but also makes this a good time to mention that one of the changes they had to make for network TV meant that Jay and Silent Bob aren't drug dealers anymore. In this episode, they use fireworks as a substitute for pot, but pretty much they're just relegated to being guys who are always around and always up to something. Episode 1 is interesting because it's funny and exciting if you're already a fan of Clerks or Smith's other movies from that universe. There's references to people that they've worked with, and I'll admit that I'm one of those people who's just tickled to see characters I like in other things. Like, there is a reason that fanfiction hit me like a ton of bricks in middle school. But while watching Jim Gisreel's review of this show, he brought up the point that it's probably not a great introduction if you've never heard of Clerks. I saw the movie before I was even old enough to get it, so I couldn't imagine not having the context. But if for some reason you watched this without having seen Clerks, please let me know, because I can't even imagine what your experience was like. Anyways, the first episode was a fun jaunt. It combined the conversational tone of the movie with the weird things that could only happen in something animated. Most of the jokes landed, and other than some very outdated, but not unexpected, vague homophobia and ableism, I think it does a really good job of differentiating itself from the movie while still playing to the fans.
You sell cigarettes here. Show some pride. Remember, the first step to respecting yourself is respecting the job.
Episode 2. The clip show wherein Dante and Randall are locked in the freezer and remember some of the great moments in their lives. Episode 2 is a clip show, and it's delightful. Dante is called in on his day off, shocker, and Dante and Randall end up locked in the freezer of the Quick Stop and reflect on their lives so far. Though mostly it's just episode 1. They also flash back to all the other times they've been locked in freezers, and also earlier in the episode, and also all the times Dante got cucked by his ex-girlfriend, and Jay and Silent Bob also end up locked in the freezer, and eventually Silent Bob breaks them out with his crowbar. After, Dante and Randall go to close the video store, and of course, get locked in, and accidentally turn it into a freezer too. So, you guessed it, they can flash back to the last time they got locked in a freezer. This is just a fun concept for an episode. Like, most of the time when you get a clip show or a bottle episode, it's late series filler. Instead, this episode subverts that standard and packs it to the brim with snappy jokes and just really getting you with all the ridiculous stuff that happened off screen. Normally it would be kind of a cop-out, but here it's just so to the point. Like, yeah, sure, Dante and Randall accidentally got married one time. Yeah, sure, they got a grant to travel the world as convenience store clerks. Sure, Randall got a mail-order husband. It doesn't get bogged down with the details, it just has a lot of jokes through and through. This was one of the 2 episodes that aired, and I totally get why. It embodies everything that makes Clerks the animated series good, in my opinion. And a big part of that is its reverence for TV as a medium. It's a bottle episode in episode 2. Come on, what embodies the spirit of network television more than that? Though, and I think I will keep coming back to this, there's definitely some humor that didn't age well, and it's a bit on display here.
Why do you want to buy a monkey?
To teach it to smoke, duh.
Episode 3. Leonardo is caught in the grip of an outbreak of Randall's imagination, and Patrick Swayze either does or doesn't work in the new pet store. The cold open of this episode is a fan mail segment where people send in letters asking Dante and Randall why there aren't any women or people of color on their show. They ignore the letters asking about adding female characters, and sidebar, one of them was sent by Kevin Smith's real-life wife. When they get a letter asking why there aren't any black characters, they immediately introduce a character named Lando, and tell the audience to keep an eye out for him. From here on out, this is an Outbreak parody, with Randall becoming convinced Leonardo became sick after being bitten by a monkey from the new pet store across the street, and definitely not the rancid burritos that Randall sold him earlier. The Quick Stop ends up getting quarantined and they're given a very short amount of time to live, most of which Dante and Randall spend trying to get their fast food order corrected. And when they don't die, the military decides the logical course of action is to just blow up the block of stores. Dante saves them by reasoning with the pilot of the bomber, and also having to falsely come out when Randall makes a joke in the background. Truly a hero for LGBTQ+ people everywhere. Oh, and also, eagle-eyed viewers are probably able to spot Lando saying hello in the beginning of the episode. So I guess they did meet their diversity quota.
Clerks, a progressive show.
This is one of the less memorable episodes in my opinion. Its best joke is probably how Dante and Randall choose to spend their last 24 hours, which is very good, but for me personally, I just didn't find it that memorable.
Here's Mr. Guilty, boys. Fire away.
Episode 4. A dissertation on the American justice system by people who have never been inside a courtroom, let alone know anything about the law, but have seen way too many legal thrillers. Dante and Randall trade places, and Randall can't handle the epic highs and lows of working at a convenience store. So, they trade back. Then, Jay immediately has a slip and fall accident in the Quick Stop, and Randall negs a high-powered lawyer who happened to be there into taking the case and suing Dante and the Quick Stop for $10 million. This leads way to a fun little Judge Judy parody, and the Quick Stop ends up not sending a lawyer, so Randall takes on the task of defending Dante. And he's real bad at it. He offends the all-NBA All-Star jury, turns the trial into an excuse to call Hollywood directors to the stand just so they can give him his money back for making crappy movies, and mostly makes Dante look really guilty. Before the trial is set to end, we get a fun sequence where everybody keeps waking up from their various dream sequences. And just as the jury is about to give their verdict, the narrator cuts in and we find out the end of the episode was lost, and instead they let the Korean animators finish it, with an over-the-top action sequence and anime-style animation. This episode is pretty good. Give her a couple jokes that rubbed me the wrong way, especially one where they say the NBA All-Stars have been replaced with the WNBA and everyone just boos. And also Randall just reciting a bunch of racist stereotypes to an all-black jury. Like, he's portrayed as the bad guy for this. It's just awkward to sit through it. I've seen in other reviews that this is kind of a fan favorite, and although I didn't like it as much as other episodes, I think the fact it's a genre parody rather than a direct parody definitely lets the writers have more fun with it. And again, the joke where Randall's negging a lawyer into taking a case against his employer is so stupid that I laughed every time. I also want to mention that this is one of the 2 episodes that actually aired on ABC.
Now go. Spread your message of male worthlessness and lesbian liberation all over the globe, friend. Then, and only then, will you truly be the one.
I shall. Farewell, lesbians.
Goodbye.
Episode 5. Dante and Randall and Jay and Silent Bob and a bunch of new characters and Lando take part in a whole bunch of movie parodies, including, but not exclusive to, The Bad News Bears, The Last Starfighter, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, plus a high school reunion. The penultimate episode finds our characters going to a high school reunion, and also they parody a bunch of movies, including, but not limited to, Indiana Jones, The Last Starfighter, The Bad News Bears, and... oh, wait, that's all in the title. But seriously, Dante and Randall go to their high school reunion, and because it's a joint reunion with the classes of 70, 80, and 90, Leonardo is there. He and Dante commiserate over being losers, with Dante not being remembered as the manager of the baseball team, and Leonardo not even being able to win the superlative for Best Evil Billionaire with a vendetta against convenience store employees. It's heavily implied that they hook up about this. And then Leonardo gives Dante a Little League baseball team as a hush payment, launching the Bad News Bears parody. Randall, on the other hand, is having a great time, because he just found out that every woman he's ever dated is now a lesbian. He assumes it's because he's that good. A girl who had a crush on him in high school tries to hook up with him, only to join the resistance when he becomes more interested in an arcade cabinet that they used to have in the lunchroom. He becomes the best ever at this and is recruited by the government into a secret program. This is the Last Starfighter parody. These stories go about as well as you can expect, with Dante recruiting Jay, who is canonically still in the 4th grade, to lead the Little League team to the championship. And Randall ends up being enslaved to build pyramids, and also he turns a trio of geishas into lesbians. Dante accidentally saves Randall and also all the children of the team they're supposed to play for the championship, and then he makes these sickly, malnourished children play baseball immediately after, so he can finally be a winner. This was a fun episode. There's a lot to unpack about, homophobia and probably racism, but the parodies were pretty fun, even though they're movies I've never seen before. I also like that it never really lets up on the gas. The whole episode was packed with jokes and references, and comparing it to the Outbreak episode, it's a pretty good parody episode.
I think we need to take a stand, Randall. Let's just stay in here and ignore what sounds like too much plot outside. Under no circumstance, no matter what's going on out there, do we step 1 foot outside that door. Agreed?
Agreed.
Episode 6, the last episode ever. The series ends on what I think is a pretty high note, with Dante and Randall deciding that from now on, the show is going to be just like the movie. This is prompted by fans who are disappointed with them at a Comic-Con, and also, everyone assumes they're gay. Don't worry, they will return to that joke no less than 450 times in this episode. They do, however, hold true to their promise of being more like the movie, with Dante and Randall getting stuck at the quick stop while mostly all of the visually interesting stuff is happening just off screen. In this case, a carnival with special guest Alan Thicke. They get an array of guest references to the movie, like Dante's ex Caitlin Bree cheating on him with literally anybody, and some throwback characters from other Kevin Smith movies, specifically with a cameo from Walt Flanagan and Brian Johnson, who play the fanboy and Steve Dave respectively. However, it also gets into the cartoon craziness that makes Clerks the animated series fun to watch. They accidentally prank call the president, then they play the Brazilian national soccer team, and they delve into a Duck Amuck parody when they finally do leave the quick stop. Duck Amuck, if you don't know it by name, is the Looney Tunes short where it gets really surreal and Daffy is harassed by a sadistic animator. The sadistic animator for Clerks decides to put them into a Leather Daddy nightclub, by the way. In the final moments of Clerks the animated series, it's revealed that Jay and Silent Bob are the animators. Roll credits. The most surprising thing I found while watching Clerks the animated series was that it wasn't my new favorite canceled show. Generally, I thought it had some really funny moments, but I also think it aged about as well as you'd expect a comedy written by white male nerds in the 2000s to. Not a knock against it necessarily. It just keeps it from maybe being as timeless as other adult animated series of the time, though I can't really think of anything that got more than one season that was doing what Clerks was doing either. I teased it earlier, but I do think that my favorite part of Clerks is how much you can tell the writers care about TV and TV shows as a medium. When the show isn't directly referencing other television, it's writing into and subverting television tropes. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the second episode is literally a bottle episode. And it works because it's so silly to have an episode that doesn't have anything to flash back to. And they continue to use tropes as through lines. We get a court drama, a fan mail segment, a Trading Places episode, and even the last episode references having a crappy show and selling out. It makes it seem more like a meta late series commentary in a much longer running show. Clerks is oozing with references to all the things we love, or maybe even hate to see in TV. And that's before we even get into how much it references pop culture and actual content you might see. It takes the nerd talk you remember from the movie and other Kevin Smith properties and really packs it to the gills. Only this time, they can devote a lot of time to acting out those references. 2 episodes of the 6-episode run aka 1/3 of the show, are rooted in direct movie parodies, and I bet the total number of direct parodies or references would be a lot more if you broke it down. If I had to pick a second favorite part of Clerks the Animated Series, it'd probably be the art style. First of all, the character design was done by Steven Silver, who you might know best as the lead character designer on Kim Possible, or maybe even better yet, the art director for Danny Phantom. Both of which I don't think I need to tell someone watching a video review for a 6-episode cartoon from 2000 are well known for their art. And I know that I'm singing to the choir when I say that this is peak late 90s, early 2000s aesthetic character design. I just think I'd be a fool not to mention it. The caricatures of these real actors are just so delightful. Everyone looks unique and fun to look at, but I can also identify these guys as the cast of Clerks in a heartbeat. I also want to mention the elephant in the room. Clerks has some representation and insensitive humor issues. For the most part, the show seems to be aware of these problems, and a lot of them are referenced directly in the text. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad show because they make a lot of gay jokes. But, and I can't stress this enough, there are a lot of them.
What is this guy's fascination with gay jokes?
Clerks spends a lot of time either crossing or towing the line of homophobia. Characters are constantly accusing each other of being gay, sometimes using slurs, and occupying that weird gray space of both accepting LGBTQ+ people and making the concept of being gay the butt of a lot of jokes. We also have moments like the throwaway gag where Randall accidentally gets a mail order husband, who he develops a genuine relationship with before his husband is transferred to a new company location.
Goodbye, Tashiro, wherever you are.
In the same episode, we get a scene where they use a term for a cigarette as a chance to use the F slur. It's a weird combination, and so much of the show, you can't just ignore it. And if you're a woman, also don't expect to see much of yourself represented here. I'm not sure there's more than 3 women with speaking lines, which isn't shocking, especially if you're familiar with Kevin Smith's other movies. It's very male-led. Also, not to tie it back to poor LGBTQ+ representation, all the lesbians we see in the episode are voiced by a deep-voiced man, and I don't know, it's even the ones that are voiced by a woman earlier in the episode. It just feels like it's feeding into some weird stereotypes here. Also, there's a lack of characters of color. Again, also referenced in the show's fan mail episode, but the show doesn't help itself with a few out-of-pocket jokes about racist stereotypes, like Randall's attempt to relate with the All-NBA jury. There's also an episode where Randall is gifted 3 geishas, and it's just a little bizarre. I don't think it's great or an eye-opening take to say that a show from the 2000s has parts that have aged poorly, and I'd hesitate to say that's why I wasn't absolutely enamored with Clerks. I think that, ultimately, I didn't watch this show at a time where it resonated with me as much as its film predecessor did. Seeing the movie Clerks for the first time as an adult, I knew exactly how terrible it was to be working at a dead-end job. I could understand and relate to the characters in their cynical worldviews and their aspirations to do nothing. And I wouldn't say that I'm more mature or know better now, but watching the Clerks cartoon for the first time, I would say that I'm in my mid-20s now, with a college degree and a full-time job in a field where I no longer have to do customer service. I don't spend quite the same amount of time daydreaming about crazy things that could take me away from work. Okay, actually the last part hasn't changed. But I don't think I liked it as much as I would have had I watched it when I was 18 or 19 or even 20, and living a life more like that. So, where did I end up landing on Clerks? I think it was a good show. It had a lot of fun and interesting episodes, and I think that it's well written, and as someone who's interested in the history of TV and TV tropes, I think you could watch this show 100 times and still pick up a new reference or subverted trope that they use. It may not have been my favorite thing of all time, but I can't help but wonder what it may have been had they been able to do even just a 13-episode run. Clerks knew what it was, and I think that they could have put out a truly great season had they been given the opportunity. All in all, Clerks is a pretty solid 4 out of 5 series, in my opinion. and it's worth a watch for anyone who's interested in early 2000s animation.